Hi, I'm Shauna Christenson. I'm an educator at the Weiss School in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, and I'm also the founder of the Aerospace Public Policy Institute, where we work with students to educate, communicate, advocate, and legislate on behalf of space policy. My student Odiria Spaitzis and I are here today to talk with you a little bit about how we can really start to excite the younger student. Because when we think about the pipeline of the aerospace future, we know that it's important to start even younger than where we are currently. And so let's talk about kids in general. First of all, we know that they're innate learners. They're so excited about the idea of learning. And when they're young, they have no idea that they're not capable of doing big people work. And this has to do with forming their identity. So as early back in pedagogical theory, we understand that even Erik Erikson has talked regularly about the stages of competency. And he reminds us that as early as age 5 through 7, students are already starting to identify with that which they feel competent. They're starting to say, hey, I'm really good at math, or I'm really not good at science, so I must be a math kid. We need to do more to change that, particularly with certain groups, if we are to necessarily fill this pipeline of the future. Because what we're finding as we look over a period of time is that even if a student does enter a higher level learning for aerospace or for some of those STEM fields, the chances of them staying all the way to actually entering a career are also greatly reduced. So we have to do more early on. As you can see from the bottom picture here, the kids this day in kindergarten were not just playing dress up. When they put on their lab coats, they were sharing out about their experiments, and they knew that they were scientists this day. This is incredibly important because if they don't have role models at home, if they don't have science majors or doctors that they can look up to and say, oh, that's something in my future. If they don't have text-rich material in their home that kind of reinforces the idea that they could actually be a scientist, then it has to come from somewhere else. And we would offer for you today that it should start as early as these students in kindergarten. This is especially true for underrepresented populations, particularly girls and people of color. Now, while there has been an increase for women in STEM industries, the fact is that there are still some disparities. First and foremost, the number of women who are entering these fields are usually more so in the life sciences and not as much in the aerospace and the engineering fields. Also, there's still a huge discrepancy when it comes to the amount of money that a woman can make versus a man in these STEM careers. And we also see the problem with retention, in part because there are fewer examples of women in those higher learning areas, as well as in those jobs. But that number is even more drastically reduced when we look at people of color. So when you combine people of color who are also women, you can imagine that this is an area that incredibly needs improvement. If you look at this pie chart, of course, almost half is entirely made up of white men. And even though that little pie portion for women is increasing, you can see that as far as people of color are concerned, we have a long way to go. And where do we start? We start much younger. The idea of starting as early as kindergarten so that we can help students to identify that even if they don't feel good at something right yet, that they have that ability to actually reach out to become that later on. And of course, socioeconomically, this is ultimately very important because over the years, STEM jobs have increased in as far as how much they're being paid regularly, but not only regularly, in how they advance from year to year. So if a student who already doesn't identify themselves as a STEM or science person is relegated to a different field, sometimes this kind of perpetuates that self-fulfilling poverty cycle that oftentimes already affects people of color and certainly sometimes girls as well. And so there has to be a way that we can change this, primarily with regards to education. We all hear the 21st century skill set. We hear it bandied about all the time. This is the wave of the future, and we are here now. And while it is true that the jobs of the future are now, and that these jobs that we're looking forward to are embracing these skills, today, my partner and I want to discuss the importance of focusing on the 4 C's very early, the idea of critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication. And so to share with you a little bit about those soon, he's going to talk to you about some activities that a young teacher or a teacher of young students can incorporate early on. Because when you incorporate real project-based learning and the idea of hands-on education, amazing things can happen. The students at our school are fortunate to be able to look up to middle school students who have actually been selected by NASA twice in order to build, launch a CubeSat satellite. And so they get the idea that this is something that's common in their school, so that when they are starting these other activities earlier, they are very excited to see the possibilities that await them. And so now here's Aurios, who will share with you some of these activities that we do with our younger students, with hopes that you too may be able to share these with teachers around the world.
There are many ways to get students inspired so that they can be the next generation of the STEM workforce. Some activities that we are involved in are STEAM Cards, STEM Fest, summer camps, and Science Palooza. Science Palooza is an all-day science fair at Weiss. Typically, this event is for middle schoolers. However, it was recently expanded to include primary and intermediate levels. A major focus of this event is to encourage younger kids to participate in STEM work through fun and hands-on experiments. Importantly, the skills reinforced for all in these activities are literacy, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and social skills. Teaching the next generation about STEM is critical. As part of outreach to younger kids, Y students are involved in creating STEM-themed coloring and activity books, and the older students are creating rocket launch parties for younger students to participate in, with activities such as soft rockets and oversized Lego competitions. One great example of older students paving the way for younger students is the Weiss Wolverine CubeSat development team. The Wolverine team started out with a few middle school students who were interested in aerospace and wanted to put a small satellite into space. However, they have now grown up and are in high school. This has left room for the next generation of 5th and 6th graders to continue their legacy in the form of the Wolfpack CubeSat development team. In particular, the Wolfpack team is working on space settlement design competitions and, of course, the prestigious CubeSat development.
In order for students to engage in these kinds of activities, it's very important that teachers feel that they are competent enough as well. And so we encourage students through grants that we've received in order to kind of engage them in this hands-on applications of learning. And so we encourage these educators to become members of their organizations so that they can not only utilize some of the professionals into their classrooms, they can start identifying, again, women and people of color who might be able to come to the classroom, but also so that they can start to expand how they view themselves and to be able to do the real work of aerospace by joining companies like the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, as well as Space Foundation teacher liaisons. If we are to help the STEM pipeline, we have got to help the children of today to be able to recognize that they are going to be able to contribute to this well-paying career, and one where we definitely need to fill. We have the graying of the workforce happening to a point where essentially people are retiring every day, and without us being able to fill that pipeline, we are not going to be able to take care of filling this pipeline for the future. So we look forward to collaborating with you in the future. Should you wish to join us, we hope that you'll reach out to us. Thank you.